this morning on the way here, my 14-year-old, and for those of you who don't know him or know anything about him, they know that he is not allowed to date, but there's a girl who wants to date him. And we put the snafu on that. He went on to another guy, right? And he's been on with his life. He told me this morning that she texted him last night. Yeah, just girl go to your neighborhood. And what I love about Preston, you joke about this all the time. One day they're going to grow up and I'm going to have to like deal with different things, right? He's still in the stage though when he gets a text like that, and he's like, he calls me like, what am I saying? I mean, and I'm like, I'm good with that, right? One day you're going to probably say things I don't want you to say back, but for now, I said, just say that's great. And so this morning he texted me, said, Kylie called me a loser. And I said, well, I said, just ignore it. He goes, no, that's not what loser's not a bad thing. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I said, so what does that mean? He goes, loser means they're flirting with you. And I'm like, I'm so confused. he said, no, it's not. And he said, so that's her trying to I'm like, Brendan, dude, just like put thumbs up, whatever, just move on. He's like, so I said, no, let's like ignore that. And I said, I'm still working on the loser part. He goes, and here's what said to me, Dad, it is not what you think it means. And I'm like, I guess not what I talk about when I get home, right? So I'm going to read the text to you. That's not what you think it means. Right? And it's a story that we've heard and are familiar with out of John 5 that I'm going to read it to you. And you'll, Sarah's starting laughing because we had quite the conversation yesterday. And I'll get into just for a little bit, right? This morning, Sarah. And then we can let Gene and the others work this out. Was Gene on? He's in the bed sick, I know.
Yeah, I don't know if he's
All
on.
right. Gene, when you hear this, I know you're going to go hit the recording soon as we get done. But I'll let you deal with what I'm going to skip over, and then you can deal with later in a minute. But I'm reading a book right now by Mark Batterson called F, and it's about what F, like what if you looked beyond where you were? What if you dreamt big? And so I want you to and I wrote this in the back of the book. I'm related to the book in general, but some thoughts I had about a week ago. See if you can pick out where this is in the Bible. God says, I will give you, and I'm going to read you 8 things, and see if you can pick out what book in the Old Testament, and you could probably pick out the chapter if I gave you more information. It's not like, Malachi 8:4, something like that. It's more common. I'll give you wisdom in a secret place, which is interesting because if you guys going to give me wisdom, I'd rather you do it in front of everybody. So I hear something good about myself. I'll give you wisdom in a secret place. I will let you hear joy. Now, these are verbatim statements I'm writing out. I will let you hear joy. I will let you hear gladness. I thought about what is it like to hear joy? Like if your kids are grown, hearing joy is not little kids in your home, right? That's right. You had that joy, it's gone. What does it mean to hear gladness? Number 3, I will rejoice in my bones. I read a book one time about a pastor who would preach. And when he got done preaching, he would egg his bones would ache. And that happens to me. And it's just like when you play a recital or if you lead in the music, it's like your body it just wears you out. And I think about that. How do I rejoice in my bones? Number 4, this is going to be the next 2 will probably give you a little bit of a hint. You're going to get a hint of the 8. It's going to be these 2. Create in me a pure heart. Renew a faithful spirit in me. Restore me. Grant me my needs and sustain my being. Any idea what verse the chapter it comes from? Not verses, but chapter in the Old Testament. You got an idea?
Well, I was thinking Proverbs at first.
Well, it's close.
Me a clean heart.
Yes. Brett's motion.
Wasn't it Psalms?
Well, yeah. Yes. There's a popular one. The one where David's like, we gotta get some things straight.
Yeah.
Psalm 51. And then what's amazing, he lists these things up. Give me wisdom in the secret place. I want to hear joy. Because when I see David laying these out, it makes me think, I want you to think the opposite of these, because this is what he didn't have. He didn't have wisdom in the secret place. He had other stuff going on in the secret place. I want to hear joy, which means I can't hear. There's no joy in me. Gladness. There's no rejoicing in my bones. It's only aching. I don't have a pure heart. I don't have a faithful spirit. I am not restored. I don't feel granted on anything. I don't feel sustained. And he's asking for these things. And then the next verse says, then I will teach sinners your way. It's almost as if his testimony would be the gospel, right? It's interesting. when my kids hear advice from other people that's similar to advice that I gave them. They're like, "Man, my coach told me the same thing he told me, and he's cool." And I'm like, so he's like, maybe there's something to what you're telling me. I'm like, or if you've ever spoken, and those of you that speak, right? You'll speak for like 6 months and you'll tell people the same thing for 6 months, and then you'll have a guest speaker come in and they'll say the exact same thing, and somebody in the group will be like, amazing. I've been saying that for 6 months. So there's a point at which the way you live and the things God's doing in your heart overflows, and it's your greatest story, right? So, but I want to read a story out of John 5, and this story just struck me. And I got put this on my heart this week on Monday out of a song that I heard. And so I want to read it to you now. Now, I haven't read out of the version I'm going to read out in about 200 years, because that's how long ago it was written. New King James. I usually use the NIV, but I sent that to Sarah, and Sarah had a question for me, and I tried to answer, and we kind of just went on. So I'll get to the question in a minute, all right? So I'm just going to move on. But New King James, I'm going to read it to you. Before we start, I mean, look up here. What version are you reading out of? Okay, good luck. Okay. Okay, well, it's getting ready to get fun. Okay. What version you got?
Yes.
Oh, boy. Okay. So you already know?
We can change it, but we got the Bible.
Oh, man. So John 5, verse 1. After this, there was a feast of the Jews. Many believe it was the Passover because they use an indefinite article. Not important, but just the thought. And Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Now, it's in Jerusalem by the sheep gate, a pool, which is called in Hebrew Bethesda, having 5 porches. It was the porch where people would just go hang out. And it was, you'll need a little wide in a minute, but it was a kind of not a porch as in what we would think of, but a porch as in just a place to sit, rest, and reside. In these porches lay a great multitude of sick people, blind, lame, paralyzed, waiting for the moving of the water. Now, in your Bible, verse 4, what does it do?
It says, there is no verse.
It says nothing. When you were about to read it, I thought he must be at nothing because there's nothing there. What about yours?
There.
Nothing.
Mine's in brackets.
Yes. Okay. So I sent this to Sarah, and I totally forgot about that. And Sarah, 10 minutes later, comes back. She says,
That's there.
My text was, where's verse 4? I even asked Steve, and he's like,
So I had the game on. I was watching the game yesterday when she texted me. She's like, can you turn your notes at like a Saturday? I'm like, yeah, I can do that. So she's like, where's verse 4? And I'm watching the game. I'm going, oh, I forgot there. Because like, what's going on? I forgot. What version are you using? Is it in there?
It starts with, at the waiting, it starts with brackets.
Yeah.
And then has verse 4 in the middle of that, it continues.
Okay. So, you have it in there? New King James.
Mhm.
Okay. I'm using New King James because verse 4 is in the New King James. Now, so real quick, I'll let Gina explain it later because he'll explain it way more thorough than I will. But certain of the writings were based on certain original manuscripts. And so the King James, New King James, uses the Textus Receptus manuscript, which is a good one, right? There were manuscripts that were written earlier that were many believe, and conservative theologians like we would believe, that were more accurate with the Greek and Hebrew. They were earlier manuscripts that they just hadn't used yet. So when the Textus Receptus, when they would read this, there were some of the scribes that were translating that were confused because there wasn't anything about a stirring of the pool by an angel. But when you get down to a later verse and it talked about the moving of the water, and some used the bubbling of the water, there was no record for what that was. So some went back in the New King James, the King James that was using the Textus Receptus, and said, and made a note to say, by the way, this is referring to angels that stir the water. Well, somewhere along the way, in some of the later translations, they went ahead and included verse 4. But the more modern translations went back further using more original manuscripts and said, it's actually not in there. It's actually, they don't. So it's either not in there or it's in brackets at the bottom. And I didn't want to talk about that. I was going to say, I don't want to distract from, my point, right? But I was going to say, it's there. It's actually not there. So we have to talk about it. So anyway, We'll get into that later, but in the New King James, it reads, "For an angel went down at a certain time into the pool and stirred up the water. Then whoever stepped in first after the stirring of the water was made well of whatever disease he's had." Okay, so that's verse 4. That so we don't have. All right, we'll come back to that. All right. It's actually, there's a really neat point I would make about that, but we'd be here till about 3 p.m. and we're not going to do that. So verse 5. Now there was a certain man there who had been with an infirmity for 38 years. And when Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he already had been in that condition a long time, he said to him, do you want to be made well? I just think that's such a great question, right? It's like, you've been sick with it. Because Jesus, knew he wanted to be well, knew how long he had been there. By the way, I would have to assume that one of the worst cases there on one of the portions was the guy who's been sick for 38 years, right? I'm going to say that's probably an extreme case. I'm not sure there were other there that were lepers or what have you, but he goes to this one. It says, would you like to be made well? And the sick man answered him, "Sir, I have no man to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up." Which is why some would go back and put verse 4 in, because when you read that, it's like, what's he talking about? So that's kind of more of an explanation. "Sir, I don't have anybody to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up, while I am coming another steps down before me." Now, I want you to go back to verse number 6 and look at Jesus' question. Do you want to be made well? Okay. It's not a dumb question. It really isn't. Because look at the guy's answer. That's a pretty simple. That's like, Preston, would you like to have a hot dog with ketchup on it or mustard? It's a real simple question. And Preston says, "You know what? I love hot dogs. You know, one time when I was little, we had some big party. I didn't get one. I remember that. I'm thinking, I just want to know ketchup." Look at the guy's answer. Jesus said, "Do you want to be made well?" And he says, I don't have anybody to put me in the water. Every time I try and the water stirs up, someone beats me to it. I keep trying." He didn't even answer the question. He gives why it's not going to work. It's an amazing part of the story. They're amazing part of the kind of, if you just really take time to live with the text. I try to read a text, and if I'm going to preach on it, spend about a day and a half with it, with no notes, with no commentaries, with not Googling, tell me more about. I try to spend a day with it. And when you look at that, it's interesting. He asked a simple yes or no. Do you want to be well? Yes or no. And he's like, well, here's the problem. We're all good at that. Verse 8. Jesus said, "Rise, take up your bed and walk." What I love about these 3 verses is, do you want to be made well? And the guy's like, "Houston, we have a problem." Okay, I'm going to give you something. And Jesus doesn't even respond to the angel or pool or stirring, none of that. He doesn't even go, "Well, here's the problem." He just says, "Get up and take your bed and walk." And I just love, we're going to come back to that portion, verse 9. "And immediately the man was made well, took up his bed and walked." Now, then real life happened, okay? This is real life, and I love this. "And the day was the Sabbath," and everything gets hairy on the Sabbath. "The Jews therefore said to him who was cured, isn't it the Sabbath?" I'm having a hard time reading some New King James, by the way. I'm trying a little bit. Is it the Sabbath? "It is not lawful for you to carry your bed." The guy said, the guy that made me well, he said, "Get up and walk." And I'm not going to read the rest of it. Because the rest of it is them saying, "Well, who is this guy?" Because I have no clue who he is, because Jesus had left. So I love the fact as it's almost as if I want you to, and I'm not going to, my points aren't about this. I need to deal with it now. Jesus, you want to be well? Just kind of try to the chase, right? And the sick man, 38 years, by the way, 30 years is a long time. I mean, that's a long time. Let me just say this, and you don't have to raise your hand. There's stuff some of us have been struggling for 30 years. Life, generational stuff. We talk about it all the time. It's just one of those default things that but 38 years to be on your back, that's tough. And then to have hope that the angel comes periodically and stirs the water. But, I've been like, "God, make me deaf so I can run. At least I can run to the water, right? I can't hear it, but I can see it." But no, you have to make me lame where I can't, and I'm an invalid and I can't get to the water. I've been trying to 38 years is a long time. So Jesus, you want to be made well? And he was like, "I got 38 years of problems to drop on this idea." So he shares that, and you see how he doesn't answer the question. So then Christ skips his response and says, "Get up and walk. Just take your mat and walk." Now, I don't know that the guy jumped immediately right up, because if you've been lame for 38 years, you know, and then some guy that you don't know that is the Messiah. There was no indication in the text that maybe he'd heard who Jesus was, but there's no indication that he had this immediate belief in that. If so, he wouldn't have given an explanation as to why it wasn't going to work. Almost as if he's saying, "Will you just stay by me when the water stirs? You can run me down." And Jesus said, "Just get up and walk." Story that John writes says he gets up and walks, and then as the teachers of the law, the Pharisees say, "What are you doing? It's the Sabbath. You can't be carrying your bed." It's kind of like a lesson in missing the point, right? So he said, "You can't be carrying your bed on the Sabbath." Guess who now cuts to the chase? Now the guy who was getting, he says, "Hey, the guy who made me, the guy who fixed me, he said, take up your bed and walk." I take out my bed and walking. He goes from giving these reasons why it won't work and not answering the direct question with a direct response to getting a very unimportant question to which he gives a very direct response to. "Dude, you can't carry your bed on the Sabbath." He's like, "I'm saying right now, the guy that healed me, of which you've never even tried, that you've never cared about, you've never sat by me and tried to get into the water. So I don't care what you think about me carrying my bed. The guy who healed me said I can get up and walk, and I got up and walked. Who is he?" And I love that part of the story. I don't even know who he is. And he finds out later that it is Jesus. He's in the temple. Jesus said, "Don't sin. Don't. You got to get to keep your life right." And he goes back to the Pharisees like, "It is Jesus," which causes a stir. Now, here's why this is important, and what I want to kind of drive home. When you look at the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. By the way, I don't know if you've watched The Chosen. I don't know what you feel about The Chosen. One of my kids have been watching it, so I've been watching it with him. But in the depiction of the disciples, they're all very different in their demeanor, their background, and all that. So when you read the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, Luke's very detailed as a doctor. Matthew's a tax collector, very detailed as well. John clarifies why he wrote the book of John at the end of the book. So you have to read everything prior to John with the understanding of this is why I wrote it. There's times I explain things to my children, and especially my daughter, and she'll completely miss them, like why I'm explaining it to her. And I'll have to be like, no, you don't connect why I just said that to you being a 13-year-old girl, right? And so, but John clarifies it in chapter 20, verse 31. He says, "But these things are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that by believing you might have life." So when you read that about John, I was like, here's why I wrote it. So you have to go to John 20 and look backwards and say, every story that I read, every encounter that Jesus had, every conversation with the disciples and the Pharisees was written so that you might believe that he is God and you'll have life. He's also the one that wrote, "He came that I might have life and that I might have it more abundantly." And if I describe the average church in the United States, and we talk about churches all the time and we don't talk about particular churches, we talk about the general Big C church, there's nothing abundant life that really flows out of most of our churches. And you were talking about it in the first hour. It can be snoozeville, right? And I love the analogy you used, Preston, about, if I brought someone to one of my kids' birthday parties or the birth of one of my kids, and they responded to that in the way they do in church, you're right. You'd be like, next time I have another kid, and I've done that multiple times, you're not coming back to that party. And so when you read John, everything's about believing. So the story of the man who was sick for 30 was not about the power of God. It is. It's not about miracles. It's in there. It's not about his divinity. It's there. It is about this man's faith. It is about him believing. And so I wanted to give you 4 application points. I want you to kind of let them sit in your heart throughout the week. The first one's in verse 6. And we talked about briefly when he asked him, "Do you want to get well?" Number 1, faith. When you have faith asks big questions. So I want you to take a minute, and I want you to think about your life and the rational side of your brain. And some of you are probably very rationally driven, right? My wife is very analytical. She's very rational. She's very stable. She's very methodical. My wife does not like surprises. Like if I plan a big event, I surprised her one time before we had kids and I surprised her, and it would be, she enjoyed it, right? She was very appreciative of it. But like couple weeks later, she said, I don't like surprises. And I was like, it seemed like you enjoyed it. I was like, I'm so glad you did it. I had fun. For one of her birthday, I had like 40 of her friends show up at a restaurant. And which freaked her out. I found out later. And I said, she was, I'm not big on surprises. So I'm like, why not? And here's her answer. Because I want to enjoy what's about to happen. And when you surprise me, I don't get to enjoy that's coming. And I'm like, that's the dumbest thing. No, I savor moments, and I'm like, and now, so then we had kids, right? And my son Alex, my older son, is my wife, and he same way, don't like surprises, so he didn't really know that about Eric's mom. And I was like, why do you like surprises? He goes, because I like if I want to do something big, if I want to eat 40 of my friends, I want to know it's coming, so I want to enjoy thinking about that. And I'm like, oh, your mother's son. But the idea of surprises and imagine. So my wife's very like that. Now I'm the opposite. I'm like big idea, imaginative. I float a lot of balloons. Most of them just blow away. You never see them again. Every now and then, one of those ideas will anchor to the ground and work. And the point is, when you get on the non-rational side of faith, that's hard. Because when Jesus says, do you want to be well? If Jesus came to your life right now and put his finger on your biggest problem and said, do you want to fix that? Your immediate response probably would be able to be like, yeah, but right there parallel with it would be like, yeah, but here's why that's probably not going to happen. I got 38 years of reason why that is not going to work. And that's where we go. We're finite. We're very human. But when you get away from that, and it's all faith, ask big questions. Jesus, like, would you like to be well? Remember there was a leper, there was a blind man that said, Jesus, have mercy on me. And he's like, what would you like? The paralytic that they lowered through the roof. Remember, they got him down in front. Jesus said, your sins are forgiven. He was like, that's cool and everything. Can't walk. And so the faith thing is always it always takes you beyond your human limitation, and we are uncomfortable with that. Like what if think about this thing. Let's get real. What if there were 100 of these around the country? I've heard people in the last year and a half speak about house churches who would have told you 3 years ago that Satan had created it. And now they're not comfortable going to church for whatever reason. I don't judge them. They're like, I'm not real big on big crowds. I'm like, well, let's do small groups. On small crowds. Are you big on anything? What are you big on when it comes to gathering? And they're like, this whole house church thing's not a bad idea. And so it's interesting how life can somewhat dictate how you think about certain things. So, but when faith asks big questions, it takes you away from limitations that we have created. And I'm telling you, that's hard. Which is why the guy responded the way he responded. And I'm telling you right now, and I'll make this point, and then we'll go to the second application thought. Let me just say this, and I'll be very clear. Jesus is asking you the big question. If he weren't, you'd be dead. Listen, I have people that love me, that know me, that I've never met, who follow me on Facebook. And my wife, like sometimes my wife will play the piano and I'll post one of her songs. And there's one of my favorite songs growing up as a little boy that I have never forgotten. It's probably one of the old songs that I love the most. It's a song, there's something about that name, Jesus. I mean, it's just that when I think it was Gaither, I don't know if Ricky Bill, he wrote that. That song has like never changed to me. It's just always like when I hear it, it'll just drop me, right? So I had Erica. I said, Erica, play that song for me. And I recorded it, I put it on Facebook. And so she made a comment to me, and I started cracking up. And there's points in the story, by the way. And she was like, Matt, look at all the names of the people that love this. It was like, I'm probably going to say a name that one of you probably have a friend that's saying that name. I'm not playing anything, but it's like Ethel, love this. Edgar, this is wonderful. And she goes, I can tell they're
people.
They're older, right? And so, I mean, it was all women. It was like, oh, we love you, Mr. Matthew. She goes, they're all over 90, all right? So, but when I look at that generation, and then their comedy. Those are the ones that they're either on one, like the pendulum swings, they're either way over here saying, I don't know if the guy's got anything left for me. I'm kind of at the end of my, my word. I don't have any energy left. And I can't really start a church and I don't like have much to offer. Or it's way over here and it's like, I'm gonna pray for you tonight and tomorrow morning you're gonna go out and change the world. It's like extreme. When I was in my 20s, we did an outreach night. And I didn't know what I was doing, but I told Erica, what if we had an outreach night? Because that was the thing that nobody wanted to come to. Everybody would come to the dinner and everybody would come to church on Sundays. But we did an outreach on a Tuesday night. It'd be me and my wife. And, I was like, we got to have some kids. We have more people coming to this thing. We took care of that. But I said, I wonder if I could get 200 people coming out there tonight. She's like, are you crazy? And I'm like, because there's only like 300 people going to church at the time. So I just started thinking about it, laying it out. So I went to every group in the church and said, what would you like to do? I went to what would y'all like to do? And they were like, their answer was just whatever you want us to do. I'm like, okay, that's easy. So I took care of that. When I got to the generation, which I call the wisdom generation, we're meeting at 6 for dinner. We're going 7 o'clock. We're massive outreach, door to door, phone calls, follow up, discipleship. He's in the hospital. I mean, like, I didn't care. And I kept hearing this from them. I don't drive at night. And I'd be like, I get home from work that evening. I'd be like, I don't drive at night. What am I going to, like, how do I use them? And so we're eating dinner, Sarah. We'd have the kids too. Like, what if they did the most important thing that night? I'm like, what's that? What if you fed everybody? And then at 7, when everybody went into their thing, they would go into the auditorium, get at the altar and pray for everyone that went out. I was like, hey, maybe you should be doing what I do and I should be staying home. And so I went to their Sunday school class that next week. I was like, I got an idea. And you'd have thought that I had given them gold. And I'm telling you, we had 200. I got pictures in my office of this night. We had 222 people show up that night. And about 40 of the wisdom, and they came and they laid names out on the altar and they laid out faces of people that hadn't been in years who were not going to another church. They weren't going anywhere. They laid there. They prayed for safety. They prayed for the young people. My point is that some of us may feel like we've had 38 years or 38 weeks or whatever it may be. That's not really used. But I tell that generation, you're still breathing. God's not done with you. Matter of fact, probably your greatest days are right now. And your greatest days are if you think they are. It's not about us, by the way. This is like when Jesus said, would you like to be what? It wasn't. He's saying it to a guy who had been trying for 38 years to make this work. And worked. He's like, and so when he asked him, the guy responds in verse 7, and I'll give you that point in a minute. Verse 7, he says, sir, look at them. He lists 5 things. Number 1, I have no one. Now think about it. He's standing with Jesus. He didn't know that, right? But even people who do know Jesus still live that way. I have no one. So I have no one, number 1. Number 2, I have no one that will help me. I have people in life. You have people in your life. Some people in your life, like if you need to fix something in your house or whatever, like they're near you, but they ain't gonna help you because they either can or they're watching the game. I have no one. I have no one that helped me be. I have no one to help me get into the pool when the water is stirred. There's a stirring that comes and the angel and all that, and so I ain't got no one. No one's gonna help me. I can't get to that pool. Look at the next statement. While I am trying, number 4. These aren't points that I have in the notes, but these are just thoughts in this verse. While I am trying, when you've talked about grace for the last couple of weeks, it's been amazing. No pun intended. But it's interesting that God. Here's the thing. I'm going to say this: if you want to try to make things work, God will let you. Just ask Adam and Eve. He will. Just ask Abraham. God will let you try to fix what you think he should be doing. And he'll give you good strategies and ideas and all kinds of stuff. But man, this is the bomb right here. God's like, when God's not going to stop, he'll be like, when you're done, let me know. All right. So I have been trying. And then I love this one, verse 5. I mean, it's verse 7, but it's the 5th idea. Every time I try, someone else goes down in front of me. They beat me. Just imagine all these sick people. You got 100, I'm like, this is terrible to say. I'm impressed that I laughing. You got 106 people, blind, deaf, crippled, lame, leprosy, demon possessed, and the pool starts trying to get to the water. And the first one that gets there wins. I mean, you gotta be thinking, I was so close. And I waited to survive from the sickest right. It's terrible to think about, but listen, I don't know of a better picture for our culture right now. Of people trying to fix. Listen, I was on the. I have to monitor sometimes my Facebook devotionals because people put some stuff on there, the responses. Sometimes I have to either monitor. Like there's one guy I know that he always responds with, well, not always. He has at least 3 times, and it happened this morning. You need to call me because I'm having suicidal thoughts, and I've had a family member that took their life, so I'm sensitive to that. So I'm driving down the road. I'm coming up, when I get on 39, is that 39? 33. It's upside down, but so no wonder I get lost coming here. And so I call him, and I'm on the phone with him, and so I'm going. It's a buddy of mine from high school. And he goes, man, I've been up all night and haven't eaten for a couple of days. And I think I'm done. I'm like, so Damon, listen, because I'm not going to act on it. He said, but it's just, and so he didn't have anybody in his life. And so he's been struggling with it so long. And what's crazy is it's not just guys his age. It's now working its way down, not only in the youth generation, but even in our churches. But you have a whole. But my point in telling that story is this. You know what I told him? I said, Damon, I'm going to go in and hang with a church and a group of poor people that are doing some big stuff. Go to bed. Get something to eat and go to bed. And here's what he said to me. That's all you got? I'm like, you need to eat and rest right now. And he goes, he needs it. And here's what I said. I'm not going to act on it because I know if I do, I'm going to go to hell. And I was like, well, I'm going to walk into that later because I don't want to, we'll walk into that later. I said, but you need to go to bed. Do you have anybody in your life? He's like, no. I said, what about his brother's a pastor? I said, have you talked to brother? He's like, no, I don't talk to brother. I don't talk to you. And I'm like, okay. Are you in church? No. Where's your dad at? My dad's, we don't get along. And what about work? You go, those guys are all. So it's just like, no. I said, just get something to eat and go to bed. And when I get back in my car, I'll call you. He said, okay. So, but when you look at some of the Old Testament stories of people going through stuff, the God's like, get some food, get some rest. All right. So that was a good start. My point is this: people are trying to fix themselves, and you can't do that. It's not going to work. It's got 38 years. All the stuff he lays out. So here's the first point: faith asks big questions. Next one: doubt answers with a belief that is no longer true. And this has got 2 meanings to it. So I'm just walking up and saying, doubt answers with a belief that is no longer true. So here's what he's saying. Look at verse 7. I don't have anybody. Well, that used to be true, but now the Messiah is here. Remember when Jesus went to the well and the lady was there and she begins describing one day there's going to come a Messiah. And he's going to take away the sin from the world. And he's going to establish his house, not in Jerusalem and not here at Jacob's well, but he's going to establish, we're going to worship. And Jesus is like, you're right. You are absolutely correct. She said, and she's like laying out Old Testament. And he's like, and it's the first, many believe she was the first one that he said,
Right.
And so now you'll love this side note. And I know that I'm watching The Chosen to just because I need to watch it because people are asking me about it. But in the Chosen episode where he meets the lady at the well, she tells him all these things, and he says, "I am the Messiah. I am he." And she goes, "Okay, right." So she blows it off, right? And she picks up her water pot and she goes to walk away. And remember when she ran back to Sidecar and told everybody, "Come see a man that what? Knew everything about me." In The Chosen, I thought this was interesting. She picks up her water because you know what? Like, let me back up. Last night over dinner, we've been trying to eat at the table because we used to do it all the time. And my 2 little ones moved away, and the 3 little ones they're crazy. So I'm going to give them Preston. But we've been trying to eat around the table. We've been doing that for a good about a month or 2 now. And last night, the whole thing was about my neighbors. They spent the night. They're deep into Mormonism. So we were having that discussion around the table and just talking about and my daughter goes, so some guy had some vision and you know, and they had these tablets and all that. And she goes, you know, she said, how do you know that's not true? I was like, that's a good question, Jane. I said, here's a better question. How do you know that's true? What is there? He came back and said, and it's been changed like 5,000. I mean, I said, so
Yeah.
I walked her through that, and she was like, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. And we got the Bible. We got a Book of Mormon. I started walking them through, and they were like, that's amazing. I'm like, so what I'm showing you says that what he said happened, probably didn't happen, right? So here's my point. So when Jesus says to the lady, well, I'm the Messiah, she's probably like, great. Hey, there probably been a lot of people told her that I'm going to help you, including her 5 husbands, right?
Yep.
And she was like, whatever. So in The Chosen, she picks up her water pots with he has a stick with 2 pots. She walked away. He goes, the first one's name was Reem. And he told you, and he starts telling her the name of her husbands and descriptions of who they were. And she just, in other words, he begins to tell her details about life. And she drops her 100 watts. And she realizes that it is true. And then when she takes off running and heading back to town, the disciples are coming up, you know, with the food and guy, yeah, they're going, they're disciples respond, what's wrong with her? You know, so when Faith asked big questions, Down answers with the belief that's no longer true. And the point is, she didn't think she had anybody, but now the Messiah is coming. No, he has come. He was coming, but now he is near. And you look at the story, verse 7, I have no one to help me. That just changed. You know, I have been trying to you don't try to do that anymore. What you believed was the answer to your problem, which to get in that hole, an answer. That has changed. And what you used to believe was the way is no longer the way. It's no longer true. The new way is here. I am the new way. I am the new life. And so doubt answers with why it can't be. So doubt answers with stuff that we've used for years. This doesn't work. When I first got into ministry, I never thought I'd go into ministry. I never wanted to go into ministry, and it wasn't until an accident in my life that kind of woke me up to I want to help change the world. And what happened to me I'll never forget being in seminary, and I went to work on a Saturday. You'll laugh at this, and we'll get on this another time, but I worked at a golf course because I was paying my way for seminary, and because I didn't quit for 2 years, the guy who ran the place liked me because he would hire guys, they quit in 2 weeks, and he hired someone, they quit in 2 weeks. So I'd never quit. I was always on time, and he was like, you want to help me go build a golf course in Clayton, where I live now? And I was like, Dave, I know how to build a golf course. He goes, well, I know you don't, but I'm going to teach you. But I just know if you tell me you're going to be there, you're going to be there. He goes, he was like, you want to do it? And I go, I'll give it. And I was like, well, I don't know. He goes, I'll give you $2 more an hour and pray about it. Yes. So I went home and told my wife, I'm like, I'm going to build a golf course. So I moved to another golf course, and it was a farm. It was 100 acres. It's now a whole school development, houses. And my first day, you'll love this. He put me on a bulldozer. And I had never touched a bulldozer, all right? And it was like, yeah, no, that's the proper response, other than Dangerville. And he puts me on the bulldozer. And I don't know how to turn it. He turns it on for me. And I said, what up? He goes, all day. You see this fill out here? He goes, you can't hear anything. Just go. Just drive it all day. That's the best way you can learn. And I drove that bulldozer all day. I'd run over stuff, and he would tell me, you can run over that. That's what I did all day. He taught me how to drive a bulldozer. And I helped do the greens and the tee boxes. I had to learn how to build a golf course. I built a golf course with that guy. I did that for about a year. Loved it. Now it's 18 holes, beautiful. I drove up on Saturday morning. I had to work on Saturday to make extra money. And I get there at 8 o'clock, and nobody's there. I'm like, that's odd. And I drive around. Finally, I see. I don't know why the guy thing. His name was Fenton. He drove this huge thing with the arm on it, backhoe, I guess. And it was like big as a house. He was digging up this big pond for one of these holes. And I drive up and he gets out and said, what are you doing here? I was like, I don't know what I'm doing here. I come there every Saturday morning. He goes, did you know how that happened? I was like, no. And some guy was riding a tractor through some brush, almost not like much bigger than that. And a little tree came over the tractor and got caught in one of the tires and got around his neck and hit his jugular, killed it, and he died right there on the spot. And it was, there were investigations and all that. And that was happening on Friday. I didn't know that. And so, man, that scared me, right? And I was like, don't come back. Just stay away for a couple of days. I'm thinking, I'm like shit. So I get in the car and go home. And that Monday night, That was on a Saturday. I went to church Sunday. That Monday night, a pastor came to me at the church I was attending. He was like, "You see, you want to go to Wendy's?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's just hang out, talk a little bit. We go to Wendy's. He's like, "Hey, would you consider maybe working part-time and maybe you could teach some classes, all that?" I said, "Let me bring about that." Yes. So I was in. It didn't matter. You can all me to keep the nursery. I mean, I'll keep the nursery, dude. I don't want to go back to that. My point is, when I went into ministry, I went in with this idea, as a lot of us do in life, that man, it's going to be fun. I'm gonna like, we're going to change the world. I didn't know there were so many systems that didn't even work anymore. And then I'm like, why don't we change that? And they're like, oh, here's 13 reasons why we're not going to change that. And I'm like, oh, let's do it this way. And they're like, you got to talk to Betty. I'm going to talk to Betty's like, you got to talk to Harry. I'm going to talk to Harry. Well, after about a year, I'm like, yes, they're never going to change. And I had this wide-eyed idea of what it would look like. And it made it just punch me right in the face. And it took my breath a little bit. And so doubt, when you in ministry a long time, you look at after a while, you're like, you answer with doubt. You're like, ah. But some of the stuff we were doing, like, this no longer is true. It no longer works. It's no longer apropos to what we're doing. And so that's exactly what this guy did. It's what we all do. We've got to, when faith asks you a big question, we always respond with, why it's probably not going to work, And Jesus is like, it's no longer true. I'm here now. Like when he preached the first message, he goes, there's coming a year of Jubilee. There's coming up. And they're like, it is here. He is I. And that's hard for us. So faith asks two questions I want you to do. But then the typical response is going to be why it's not going to work. That's why kids, they say the most creative people on the face of the earth, Tom Maxwell did a study, the most creative people on the face of the earth are 5 years of age and below. Because when they go to kindergarten, they teach them to color within the lines. I mean, look at some of your pictures, pre-K5, right? All over the place. You're like, your mom's got it on the fridge. This is beautiful, right? And then, the analytical dad's like, well, it's not beautiful. You outside the lines. And so as we get older, we become more conformed to our ideas and limitations. So, and this is where this guy was. But how quickly it changed. Listen, how quickly it changes when it comes alive in your heart and God touches it. I go back to I want to hear gladness.
Yep.
I want to see gladness. I want to rejoice in my bones. I want a new heart. I want wisdom in the secret place. I want to renew a faithful spirit. I want to restore it, grant, sustain. Then I will go. And this guy's here. Pharisees are like, we didn't talk. He's like, I don't care. You can go jump in the pool I've been trying to get in for 38 years. I don't care. Number one, faith, that's a good question. Number two, doubt ends with truth that's no longer there. Which, by the way, which I think is ironic that verse 4 is not in there. We'll go back to that some other time. I'll let you know. Number 3, in light of verse number 7, I think about this statement. We often know more about, and I'll use the word stuckness. We often know more about our stuckness than we do our redemption. We just happen to live where we were stuck. We know more about why we're stuck. Like, I know the problem. Preston says it all the time. If you got a problem, come tell me the problem, but have thought about it long enough that there's a solution to that bad boy. Because it's easy to identify what's not working. We know more about our stuckness than we do our redemption. And when I look at this guy's story, I see that switching. In verse 7, he's given all the reasons why it's not going to work. But when you drop down to his healing, and then the Jewish leaders come to him and say, dude, you carrying your mat. He knew that. He knew that law. He had 38 years to sit on his bum and think about all the rules, right? So he's been thinking about 38 years, and then all of a sudden, his spirit, his life, his whole world has changed. I mean, he hasn't even had a chance to enjoy it yet. Someone's condemning it. You're carrying your own mess. And he's like, did you have your mind? And I think we tend to not be this guy in regards to his immediate response to his salvation of his healing. I mean, is like he didn't care what anybody thought. He couldn't walk 38 years, and now he's refreshed. I don't care about it. You carry my mat. I'll carry whatever I want to carry. A lot of us were that way when we first came to Christ.
Right.
It was like, you feel it. It's raw.
Yep.
And it's new, and you're thankful. You're grateful for the grace, right? Then you get accustomed to it. And then the whole world's like, okay, you can worship God from 11 to 12 on Sundays. Outside of that, It's a weird one. And then when you listen, and this is funny, but it's true. Then when you miss the 11 and 12, you get in trouble. So the 11 and 12 becomes what I have to do. So it's like, man, if I can just get that hour in, I'm good. And God's like, man, you missed it. You've missed it. When I would lead someone to Christ, they would be at everything at the church. When I was leading people to Jesus and they were new to the church and new to Jesus, I don't care what type of meeting we had. They were like, can I come to that? And I'd always say, yes. And we'd be talking about the Bible. They'd be like, I'm in on that. Why? Because it was overflowing in their hearts. And I am guilty, and this message is for me. By the way, don't forget the context. Context is about believing. It's not about the miracle. It's not about the law. It's about believing. But this is for me though, because we do get over grace. We get over mercy. We get over healing.
Yeah.
And here's what happens. And this is the more potent part of that statement. It's not so much that we get over it, that's the bad part. That is bad enough. But when you get over mercy and grace and healing, you no longer pursue it.
Right.
You know, I'm not going to pursue it very well because I just it doesn't mean anything to him. He probably needs his life somewhere. He's going to need it growing up. He's a kid. I mean, the world he's going to grow up is way different from the world we grew up in. He's going to need grace and mercy and someone to walk him on that journey. But if it's not real to me, it's not going to be real to him. Which is why this guy, in the moment when the Jewish leaders came to him and said, "You can't be doing anything," like, whatever. Or you're breaking the law. And he goes, and he didn't care. After a while, we begin to care. After a while, we're like, you know what? I gotta dot that I and cross that T, and I gotta make sure that everybody's like, I'm gonna say this and look around and make sure everybody likes it. And then I'll go, no, this guy's like, I don't care what you guys think. That guy who healed me, who he didn't even know he was. He said, take down my mat wall, and I'm doing that. Why? Because he really was in tune with his redemption, with what had happened to him. And here's one more thought, and then I get my last point, and we'll pray. I don't think we keep it vibrant because we're attending a once a week thing. You've been screaming that for months now. It's vibrant when you get up in the morning and there's nobody around watching you read or pray, and nobody knows, and you have wisdom, the secrets. Because I'm all about applause. You know, I'm all about like when the pandemic happened and it shut down big gatherings. Man, if you're a speaker, that's a bummer. You know, let's do like small groups at home. It's like, how about we not do that? Let's do 1,000 people in a really small room. That's okay. Energy really high. It's like musicians, you know, singing to nothing. It's like it's hard. And but when you have that vibrancy, when it wakes you up in the morning and it's vibrant to you, days like today are not an engaging with that. Days like today are an over. Like you've already been doing it. And, you know, I keep saying it to me all the time. And they said, you've heard it. You guys have heard it. We all heard it, right? I'm going to church, man. He's going to feed me. He's going to feed me. The master can get up. He's going to feed me. I'm going to be like, give it to me. I mean, back in like when I was growing up in the Baptist, like, take that, look, bring it. And I'm like, this guy's me about on dope. Then they come to church for an hour. Bring it to me. I'm like, you got other issues. I can't help you within 30 minutes. The point is, you should come already fed. It's not about the sermon that we've made it about that. Satan's going, I like that. Because another 30-minute message that can't compare to the other 100-some hours a week that your life is getting wrecked by culture. This guy in the moment just like he got a hold of that redemption, and he went from verse 7 to saying, here's the 5 reasons this ain't going to work, to verse 8 or 9 telling the Jews, you can go jump in a lake. It was instantaneous, and when you stay in that moment, it changes. When faith comes asking big questions, you're like, okay, God, walk me through that. That's a big deal, right? And this whole thing is about belief. I have written these things that you will believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that believing that you will have life. Listen to this, in his name. That I can't do anything outside of Christ. It is a miracle of God that I'm still married. And I'm not, that's funny, but it's not. It's a miracle. No marriage in my family has ever lasted. And I can look at it and say, no, I've done biblical principles. We pray together here and there. And we had to read the Bible sometimes. And I don't yell at her. I had to beat. It's a miracle. We'll stay together. It's by the grace of God. It's him giving me life in his name. If it weren't for Jesus, hey, I wouldn't even have desire to still be with my wife.
Right.
It's a complete opposite. We're a completely opposite. in every way. It's a miracle. Anything worthwhile probably is a miracle. In Jesus' name. I'll make it on this one. Number 4, in verse number 11. His response, but he replied, the man who made me well said to me, pick up your mat, walk. Number 4, when the truth shows up, tradition gives way to freedom.
Yep.
So in my notes, Sherry graciously let me borrow her pen because I had my pen out on the way here writing notes when I was at the rest area, sir. And so I had a couple more thoughts. Sherry loaned me her pen. So I circled, look at verse 11 as compared to verse 10. I circled these things. But he replied, the man, and I'm reading the New King James one way. The man, I circled the word man, and then I drew an arrow up to verse number 10 and circled the word law. Okay? So the Jews is like, hey, it is the Sabbath. The law forbids you to carry your mat. This guy who doesn't know jack squat about the Messiah or any, he's like, there's a man, this man that's told me to pick up, he healed me. So in other words, Jesus Christ, the man came and he didn't abolish the law. He fulfilled it. You're to live in him. So the law, the difference between the man and the law. And then when I read the statement, when truth, the tradition gives way to freedom, that I circled the word in verse number 11, the man who made me well. In verse 10, I circled the word forbid. So here you have a law that forbids, but here's a man who makes me well. And it's a complete contrast. So, and then one more thought under the idea that he was free. At the end of verse 10, it says, the law forbids you to carry your mat. Now notice the difference in verse number 11. But the man replied, by the way, I can't get over this thing, the man who made me well, because he knows who loves him. He knows who cares for him. These yahoos that just came up to him, they didn't care one bit about him. They didn't care one bit about him. And hey, it's the same today. I read this statement yesterday, and I didn't put it out on social media because I know people would go crazy. But the statement it said some people would ruin a life to keep a tradition.
Mhm.
And it was in church world, right?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, man, that's very true. I'll keep my tradition. I don't care if I don't reach 1,000 people who never Jews. I'm going to keep our tradition. And God's like, man. So the Jews knew that he forbids you to carry your mat. Look at his response. The man who made me well said to me, pick up your mat. He didn't stop there. Because the good response is, you can't carry your mat. The law forbids it. And he's like, the man who healed, he said, pick up my mat. He gave me permission to pick up my mat. He didn't end it there. He said, he told me to pick up my mat and do what? A walk. Which is the important part of this whole story. He healed me. It's not about the mat. It's not about the water. It wasn't about 38 years and seconds. It was about a man who told me to do something that I, for 38 years, couldn't do. And I'm doing it. I don't understand it. I don't know how it's working. My legs are that big around. I'm walking. And you can jump in my leg. Man, when truth shows up, tradition gets way to free. It's free. Now let me finish with 2 thoughts. One is about freedom, the other is about the overall application of this text. Number 1, you're free. The last point, I want to clarify this. I don't think I have to in history, but it's largely speaking. He who the sun sets free is free indeed. Set free, you kind of do your own thing. I have a little dog, a little black dog, and I think it's Coco. I don't know why he thinks Coco, because it's not brown. But anyways, and so, but he the last 4 or 5 days, he's been getting out in the backyard, and I don't know why he's doing this. I only learned it. I think he's just a demon dog. But he finds holes in my fence, and he's squeezing the holes, and he's getting out and he's running. Like, we'll let him out, and then like an hour and a half later, I don't care about dog. We don't hang out. He's not my friend. I'm not his friend. So I'll let him out, and Eric will be like, it's been gone for a long time. I'm like, why just let him out? She goes, he let him out like an hour ago. I'm like, I don't know. He must have gotten out. She's like, you don't want to go get him? I'm like, honey, I got so much going on right now. Last time I that dumb dog. His name's not even right. Coco, he's black. Okay, they should call him Blackie. She was like, so we had to send the kids to get him. And so we found where the hole was, let him back out. Now he's walking along. I let him out. We go to the fence, walk on the fence and look. See where he can get out.
There's somebody's love.
Yeah. Sister, yes. Lord, forgive me for not loving my dog. And my kids, so my kids get to chase him, and so like he's like, but within the boundaries of that fence, I don't care what he does. Now he's getting out, and now there's other dogs, and there's anyway. So it's a whole new thing. So my so my kids, they get worried when he's gone. They'll go find him, I'll bring him back, and I'll get on. Even they're like, oh, y'all let him, let's fix the hole. And I'm like, he shouldn't be going in anyway. So it's an issue. But the point is, I'm free not to go do what I want to do. I'm free to do what he called me. I'm free to do the Great Commission with faith and creativity. I'm free to look at 38 years of junk in my life that I've been battling every day and say, God, I need you to help me fix that. The way I think, the way I live, the way I treat my wife, the way I treat my kids, the way I don't personally evangelize. The fact that I got 9,000 friends, I've never gone any deep with any of them. God, like, how do we break that? Personal evangelism was called the way of the dodo bread. Like, we don't need to do that anymore. And so we're not free to just do whatever we want to do, because a lot of people, I'm free indeed. You just want to go do whatever. Well, no, you're not free. And you're free indeed to live in the name of Jesus Christ. But the book of John was written so that you may have life in my name. So it's free to do great things. But beyond that, it's about this question. What do I believe that God wants to do? I'm not talking personal to you, okay? I'm not talking about the church. I'm talking about in your heart. Because if God moves here, he'll move here. If he's moving in the secret place, then man, you can just the church will move forward. What is God asking you to believe? That in your body, you're like, it's no way. That's what happened. You'll laugh at this and I'll pray. My wife's love language is quality time. And if you've hung out with me at any length of time, you know that there is no such thing for me as downtime. Like I should, and I try to. But I don't. It's terrible, man. It's like Gatsby's like, no, I love that language. It's quality time. I'm like, I know, I'm working on it. And so I should. My wife will share with me for like 35 or 45 minutes. I'm like, just like share. And I know that's what she needs to do. And I was like, I'm doing everything I can. And I was like, I don't get tired. I don't take naps. My eyes are dripping. And then when we get done, I'm tired, man. I'm like, whoa. I ain't gonna take a nap. Tired. He just laid stuff on me. That wasn't even important. But just the fact I couldn't talk for 40 minutes kills me, right? I'm being honest, right? I'm just honest into it, okay? Which I probably could say that's probably not right. But then on the other hand, you got me and I'm just like, man, all these and she's like, I have 100 people over my house and be like, man, we need like 8 weeks to plan. I'm like, no, they're coming over like in 30 minutes. And so it's funny, right? And we all can relate to that, but I have to, God, I had a guy call me the other day. He wants to go do something big in ministry. 29 years old, 2 little kids. Why? Called me yesterday. Struggling, service, going under, want to leave. What do I do? I'm like, just hang on. I'll talk to you on Monday. We'll talk about that. And he goes, I'll do whatever you want me to do. And he said, I'll move. I'll go to I'll plan something in Boston. He's like finding radical ideas. And I said, David, I said, you know what the most radical thing you can ever do in your ministry? I was like, I knew. I told my wife, you want to share something good with me? Like, I don't even know this guy that well. I've talked to him like maybe 5 times, and known him about a year. I said, you know what the most radical thing you could do in your ministry is? He said, well, I said, the most radical thing you could ever do in your ministry is to love your wife and kids. Like, I mean, to where she thinks she is a queen, that God gifted her you. It's like silence. You got any church plan idea? And I said, listen to me. You honor God's big on brides. Honor your bride. Take care of the stuff. I said, I got ideas for, but trust me. And my point is this. When you look at the hardest thing in your life, the thing that would be your weakness, the thing that would be your 38-year can't get to the full thing. Maybe that's the miracle God's going to do in your life. And for some of us, I'm too young for God to do anything more radical because I don't really know much. Or I'm older, I'm kind of set in my ways. And man, it's all lies. It's all doubts that just spring up in us to keep us from asking really big faith questions.
Yep.
You know, I tell you, if I didn't believe we could change the world, I'd stop this ministry thing a long time ago. Part of my passion is to tell people that aren't in ministry full time, like we talk about it all the time. We act like me standing behind here, I'm the one that has to go save the world, and you're on the sideline going, "Well, that does work. That looks like that's really hard." No, it's not. I'll never forget standing up. I promise I'll pray after this. We'll be done. I know I've said that 9 times. I'm sorry. I'll never forget giving this speech when I was like in my probably 27 years, 28 years old. I had gone full time at the church, my first church, and I had my first meeting. I had like a third of the church there, and I deemed them all leaders. I called them all in, the senior pastors in there, and I had the speech I was going to give them about growing the Sunday school, the hour before church, and so I got them all in there. Now, mind you, I don't know most of them, and but God, early on in my ministry, just gave me this, and it wasn't me, but He just gave me this deep passion for people that were in the church that were not working at the church, who worked 60, 70 hours a week and they showed up limping on the weekend. And realizing that sometimes when they show up, we beat them over the head with whatever it is that we did studying that week, and they leave limping even more than they limped when they showed up. And I just like, I'd grown up in that, right? These people, they're here on Sunday, they're given half their Sunday, only get Saturday. They're given half the other day to only get up at 5 a.m. to go back. I'm like, man, I'm gonna light them full of hope. I got them all in that room, and I just gave this big Braha speech. And by the way, that whole thing exploded in a good way. I mean, I created a fire, but both of them were good. But I'll never forget saying to them at the end, and I didn't. This wasn't in my notes, and I said, I am not your leader. I'm not like singing bells. I'm like, I see. You're wrong. I hired you full time to lead. And I'm like, I am not your leader. God is your leader. I said, no, because I'm not your leader, I don't want you following me. I don't Paul said follow him. I'm not there yet. Follow. Don't follow me yet. I'm 26. I can't even spell follow. I don't want you behind me. I want you beside me. If you're behind me, all you see is the back of my nappy head. You can't see the vision. All you can see is me giving direction. I don't want God doesn't just speak to me. God speaks to all of us. Some of you are like, well, you don't know what I've been doing. I know who you are because I know who I am. Get up here beside me. Let's lock arms. So I gave that big speech, right? Once I got done, it was silence. Nobody was nodding. Nobody clapped. And then my wife was there, but like, I said, get beside me. We're going to do this together. You're all here. We're going to change the world. And I remember I got in the car that night, and it was a Wednesday night. We canceled everything for that meeting. And the man was quiet. We got how many kids. We get the car, we're driving. The church house had a long driveway, and Eric didn't say a word. We in the driveway, got the main highway, and now I'm thinking, I got made a mistake. We get on the highway. My wife was like, "That was so awesome." I'm scared. But it took a couple days, but things began to circle back, and then that changed me because I believed it, and they didn't believe it because they didn't believe in themselves. Nobody told them they could change the world. I didn't know what that meant, right? I don't know what that meant. I had no clue. I know it's in the Bible, and I know to him the Son sets free indeed. I know that He wrote these things, so I will believe in His name and have abundant life. I have life more. I believe all that. So I was like, let's do this together. It's not just for pastors, for everybody. So when you look at the story of a guy who 38 years was just broken, one moment he went from here's 5 reasons why I'm not going to work to I don't care what anybody thinks anymore. I got my mat. I'm walking, whether you like it or not. Man, I think God's like, I need more of that. And I need more of that people never get over the grace that saved them. Okay, I'm going to say one more thing. Sorry, 30 seconds. This is deep. This is powerful. Mike, and it's sad, but it's powerful. Luke, last night at dinner, said this to me about our Mormon neighbor. True story. And I hadn't gotten over this. He said, Dad, you know what I've been praying? I said, what have you been praying for? He goes, you told me that if a child dies before they've made a decision or before they've reached it, that they go to heaven, like, if they're younger. I said, he goes, I've been praying, maybe they would pass away before they came to that decision point. That's heavy. I was like, Luke, I think there's a better way. We're gonna work through that one. Isn't that wrong? Like that's like I'm thinking. I mean, when they left the table, and Eric, I mean, I have lost something along the way. Because here's my son, brother loses his best friend so that he can see him. He'd rather lose him for a little bit so he can be with him.
Yeah, cool.
And I'm like,
Yep.
I've lost something along the way.
It's cool.
And I think this pandemic is telling the church, you gotta get that back.
Yeah.
We look at the pandemic as a bad thing. It's a beautiful opportunity for us to change the world.
Yep.
Father, we love you. Thank you for the gospel being alive. And thank you that that John included the story of this guy. There were probably other people that were getting sick for a couple of years. But this guy had 38 years, nothing. And the Messiah shows up and says, it's all changed. And God, you're still showing up. And I pray that you'd use us for your glory and your honor. And we love you. And we give this time to you. We pray all these things in the wonderful grace of Jesus Christ. And all God's people said. Amen.